right, I feel very privileged to be here today just to have a chance to share with you some of the things that I've learned from listening to the voices of disaster survivors over the past dozen years through both my research and volunteer work. And I really want to focus this on practical things that we can do given that our community is in the process of recovering and rebuilding following the Thomas fire and mudslide. So first, I really want to encourage us to think about how to support our community in the long term. What we know from disaster survivors across many different disasters is that often in the community there's initial unity and an outpouring of support as we go through this collectively. But then, there's different groups of survivors. Many of us were able to move as soon as the crisis was kind of over. We were able to get back into our homes, go back to work, be back with our friends and the people we care about. But there is a group that experienced so much more, and their lives aren't going back to normal or they're in a new normal because their homes were damaged or destroyed, or they're mourning the loss of people that they really cared about. And it can feel like everybody else is moving on, but you're still there. And so we need to really think about and check in with the people regularly. I want us to do this both as individuals and as a community because we make up a community that cares. And so I bet everyone here can think of somebody they know that was affected by the disaster. And I want to encourage you to think over the next few years to check in really regularly with that person. And sometimes we intend to do this. We're like, oh yeah, I'm thinking about that person, but we might not actually reach out because sometimes people are like, I don't know what to say. And I'm here to tell you it's not about what you say because there are no words for some of the experiences that people are dealing with. No words can take away some of this, but being there to listening is the most important thing that we can do because everybody's going through it in different ways. And so people might just need you to be there to give them a hug or just to sit with them or just to hear where they're at on any given day. And so I want us to think about doing that regularly. And we've done research in Puerto Rico following Hurricane George, and we saw that there was an impact on child and adolescent mental health 18 months post-disaster for the people that were more severely exposed. So I want us to also think as a community about how we can support over 2 to 5 years our survivors of this. And community gatherings are really important so we can get together and be together and mourn together and support one another. And so we've seen a lot of that in terms of like a candlelight vigils, and we had benefit concerts. But we also need to do this at the 1-year anniversary, 2-year, 5-year anniversary. And our research in Isla Vista, following the tragedy there, showed that really what people found most helpful was the stuff they initiated themselves. So community-initiated activities for remembrance was the most helpful. So we also know that it's not just about the initial impact in the first few weeks afterwards. Disasters can put in motion a whole series of stressors that go on for several years. Kids might have to change schools because they're in new neighborhoods. People may have moved away. Parents are dealing with financial stresses with insurance companies. And so this can really impact the family system. And one of the most consistent things we find is that how parents are doing in the aftermath really predicts how kids are going to do. And so for all the parents here, I just want to encourage you, like if you find yourself overwhelmed with all the things that you have to do to recover and rebuild your lives, and you're feeling more stressed than normal and maybe more anxious or worried, be proactive and just get help. Get help from somebody you know or you care about, or even possibly a therapist, because that is probably one of the best things you can do to support your children in being able to cope well and handle well. And we also found that this impacts family relationships. We found it had an impact on parents' relationships with one another and with their kids. And so I wanted to think about how we can, practically as a community, support building strong families. And so one of the practical ideas that I had was that We have a whole bunch of wonderful community and faith-based organizations, and we can do things to help support families. So, for example, we can have like a kid or an adolescent fun night, like pajama dance party or a movie night, where kids can get together, adolescents can get together, do stuff that lets them to return to play and laughter and be with other kids, and we know that is in itself promotes mental health, but it also frees up parent time to like, hey, maybe have a date night and support that spousal relationship, or just to have more time to deal with some of the stressors that they have to deal with, like talking to insurance companies. And we also know that parents are contending with so much, they may not always have the same mental and physical energy to plan fun stuff to do with their kids as a family, so having more free and low-cost things that parents can just come to with their kids and they can have time enjoying each other's company can really keep that bond going in difficult situations. I also want to spend a little time talking about what schools can do, because we know that they're one of the best public mental health mechanisms to reach nearly all the kids in any given community. And we know that disasters can increase internalizing symptoms in kids. So these are things that we can't necessarily readily see with our eyes. Kids might have more worry, anxiety, more feelings of hopelessness, but we've also seen from some research here in Santa Barbara that kids also show a lot more pro-social behavior. They're really trying to hold it together so that they don't add any more stress to their family environment. And so how are we going to help these kids if we can't really see what's happening? So I would like to recommend that we do regular screenings in schools for disaster exposure and mental health symptoms for the next few years. And then for the kids that are struggling with clinical levels of distress, that we be proactive and get them help and support early on so that it doesn't become a cascading spiral where, yes, these symptoms, worries and all that stuff affects your ability to pay attention and concentrate and do well in school. And so we don't want, then you're starting to do not so well in school, and then that makes you feel bad and it to spiral down. It's better to be proactive and get help. And also we need to support our teachers and school staff as they're on the front lines of really supporting the community. Who do parents turn to when they want advice about development for their children? They often go to the teacher first. Kids will go to trusted adults first. And so I think we can help, provide training for teachers to be able to know exactly how to identify when there's emotional symptoms that might need additional help, or how to build resilience, or how to talk about this and what not to say. Like, I think we can train in practical ways that are consistent with their professional role, because when we were studying this following 9/11, most teachers felt unprepared on how to handle all the student reactions, but they kind of learned on the job. So I think we can be proactive. Finally, just a little thing on community. So I want to make one point here is that so we find that kids are at risk for increased sedentary activities post-disaster because maybe there's not, the parks might have been destroyed or damaged, or parents are so busy that there's a lot more screen time. And so we've been doing such a wonderful job of helping our neighbors rebuild their homes and clean out. We also need to make sure, as soon as we can, to make sure park and recreation activities are cleaned up so that kids have a safe place to play. We also can think about, there's so many people have been generous with their money. I would also recommend that, families have financial stresses after this. They don't have disposable income for their kids getting in art classes and dance classes and sports scholarships. So those are really practical things that build a kid's sense of competence and can promote well-being in the aftermath. So in closing, I just want to say, I want to thank the parents and the children and youth that have taken the time over the years to really share with us their experience so that we have ideas of how to better support other children and families after disasters. And these are families from Puerto Rico, Santa Barbara, Texas, and many other places. And I just want to end with a message of hope. When I was in Sri Lanka following the tsunami, we engaged kids and families in play activities where they imagined rebuilding their community, and they did it with sticks and trees and all this stuff. And they loved it. They were laughing again because it got our minds off of how things are now and reminding us that things are going to be better in the future. So I just want us to keep that idea of hope in our mind. Thank you.